Welcome to Sincerely Me, a podcast about self-discovery and inner work so you can cultivate a deeper relationship to yourself and show up more fully in your work and life. My name is Tallia and I'm honored to be your host. I am here to solve one problem: insignificance. You know, that feeling of smallness, of not mattering, of not being or doing enough. Lacking fulfillment, purpose, direction, and knowing in your heart of hearts there's got to be another way, a truer, a lighter, an easier way, perhaps, to be in the world. Yeah, I'm here for that. Sign me up. I am a coach. I guide women through transformation. Women who are ready to shift their attention from the outer external world into their inner world, expand their sense of self, and untangle stories of unworthiness. Women who know lasting happiness will not come from a better job, higher pay, or anything external. Women who are tired of doing, tired of setting goals, tired of checking boxes, chasing success, becoming more productive. Women who instead have the courage to slow it down and ask some questions. I'm here for the deep stuff, the deep uncomfortable stuff, the things you yearn to talk about but maybe don't know how to. I'm here to hold space for your renewal, our renewal, to support you in becoming aware, acknowledging and accepting parts of yourself that are longing for your attention. One way I do this, aside from private coaching, is through a year-long group program called the Inner Work Circle. It's a combination of weekly coaching lessons, monthly group sessions, retreats, and one-on-one coaching. It is the fullest expression of my heart, and I cannot wait to reopen applications soon for the January group. I also, surprise, surprise, you know this because you're here, run this weekly podcast, Sincerely Me, about self-discovery and inner work to help you cultivate a deeper relationship to yourself. I ask all of my guests what it means to live a life of significance, and it is a labor of love. If you follow me on Instagram, you sure as well know that I don't use uppercase letters. I am very afraid of my parents getting older. I have an incredible, loving husband, Parsa. I cannot wait to be a mom one day. I love my dog. I really like pickles. I believe that it's okay to feel deeply. I feel everything. I have a hard time letting go. I also believe in past lives. I believe in multiple soulmates. And I believe in karma. I'm here because I'm determined to set us free of our own limitations, and I am here to serve. There is much to be done. Before we jump into the conversation this week with Erica, I would love to invite you all to take 3 to 5 deep breaths to slow down and to move from being in your head, in your thoughts, in your mind, in that monkey brain, to move from there into your heart, whatever that looks like to you, whatever that means to you, imagining kind of the focus of attention shifting from your head into your heart space. So take a few moments to slow down and to tune in and listen to this episode from an open space, from your heart space, giving your mind a bit of a rest. I'm super excited that you're here to listen to this episode with Erica. Her and I think, connected via Instagram initially, and I saw that she was the creator of this thing called the Quantum Leap Lifestyle, and I was like, okay, I need to know more. What is this all about? And came to know her as a life and business coach. She is also an intuitive healer, and she's really on a mission to help people understand really like the power they have in their own lives. So obviously it's no surprise that I wanted her to come onto the podcast as a fellow coach, as a guest, to have a conversation about really a lot of things. The first thing that I think we really hit home in this conversation is the gap that a lot of us experience, or the tension we experience between what our lives look like on the outside and what they feel like on the inside. So we really lead with that as the foundation for the conversation, and end up talking a lot about the journey of returning home to yourself and really like remembering who you are and taking this pressure away from, or off of, this idea that you can be whoever you want, you can do whatever you want, and that instead of that, it's about really coming to know who you've always been. And there are so many great tidbits in this conversation. We talk about how you have the power to choose the rules that you live by in your life. We talk about the fact that you have everything you need right now to move forward. We talk about guilt when you should be happy, but you're so not and you don't know why. We talk about the moment where you realize that it matters what life feels like on the inside, whereas we're typically told that all that matters is the appearance of it and what people can see, and that external kind of reflection of what your life is. So grab a piece of paper and a pen. There are tons of tweetable moments. I don't have Twitter. I probably... no, I shouldn't. I don't want to. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Erica. Stay tuned for the end of the conversation for a couple notes and updates from my end. Here is my conversation with Erica. Erica, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you.
Of course. As we were discussing before we hit record, I love finding other coaches doing incredible work out in the world, and think there's just so much we can learn from each other, and so much that we've seen in terms of themes and patterns and ways to support people in their own transformation. So I can't wait to explore what we've uncovered and what you've seen through your work, and what you've learned throughout life when it comes to self-discovery and inner work.
Yeah, I love this because, there's so many perspectives, and we just all bring something to the table in terms of our life experiences and kind of our take on things. So it feels really good to have these conversations with like-minded people.
I totally agree. So let's start with, this is like such a big idea to start with, but I really want to start here because I think it's something that you and I, again, kind of both are able to connect on in terms of the work we've probably done in our own lives and do for our clients. But it's this idea of helping people remember or return to who they are. And I would love to spend, honestly, if it takes the next hour, great, or the next 5 minutes, also great. But I want to unpack and untangle what that means and what that looks like, because that, I think we would both agree, is so much of the work we're here to do, is return to our truest selves and remember who we are before we learned who to be in the world, and before we took on all these layers of whatever stories, rules, what have you. So let's start there. And I would love to maybe ask you to start with your own journey of remembering and returning to yourself, and then what that looks like in terms of the work you do for the people you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting to me because, now I have like the perspective of looking back on my life and how far down the road I am. And, it's funny when we talk about journeys, because that is life, right? Like we never are done. We're always on this journey, and that really is life. But I like what you said about, and this is something I talk about a lot too, about like who we were before we were taught how to live in this world. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's interesting because I'm going to say at the beginning of like my most current version of my journey, I was really in this place of really massive depression. Mm-hmm. And there was this key moment, and I feel like I talk about this a lot, but it was such a key moment where I actually had my car keys in my hand, and I knew if I left my house, I wasn't coming back. Like, I had a beautiful husband, I had amazing kids, I had a great career, like the house, the car, all the things that externally were like what I was taught to believe meant I was living a successful life. And I was so broken on the inside and I couldn't figure out why, that it was in that moment that the decision was either like to stop living or to actually learn how to live a life that felt good. And fast forward farther into that journey, I mean, obviously a lot of things happened, but what I came to realize and what I figured out was that it was because I was following other people's direction of what success looked like. And nowhere in my life had I been told or shown that it mattered how I felt on the inside more than it mattered what my life looked on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what I had missed, right? Was this feeling of knowing that we get to feel good and we get to live this life that feels good. And we have everything we need to live that life and to feel that way. But because I had spent my whole life trying to do what I was told was the way to have a successful, happy life, I was totally focused on the external and had that resulted in like nothing internally. Nothing was right internally.
How did you know that nothing was right?
Because I didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at these beautiful children I had who were amazing. Like my sole purpose for living life had always been to be a mother, really. I mean, obviously that's not true, but like that was my main goal in life, was to be a mother and to be a really good one and to like have that relationship. I was married and still am to a man who is phenomenal, who loves me beyond anything that I even thought was possible before I met him. Right. Like I had I had a business that was really successful. I had, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
None of it mattered because I was miserable.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I know that so many people reach that point at some point in life, and to talk about it, I think normalizes it and makes it a little more okay to also admit that you're not okay, even though you quote unquote should be, because of all the things you have and how great your life looks. And you have the husband, you have the kids, you have this, you have that. And so much of us, and I know you talk a lot about guilt in your work and releasing guilt, like that, I think is the first thing we feel, because of, again, the story, the rules we're living by. And it's this idea that I should be happy. I shouldn't be feeling this way. And maybe there's an element of like not even letting yourself actually ask yourself what you're feeling, because you don't want to let yourself feel it because you shouldn't feel it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something like the guilt was crushing, right? Like I'm looking at these beautiful children I have and the amount of guilt that I had about not being happy, right? Like those two in my head, those two should have been enough, right?
Yeah.
Just that, not to mention the rest of my life, but just them. And so the amount of guilt I felt, especially as a mother, like not being happier, not being more grateful, or not, so the guilt was like, and it's a big part of what I see in my clients too, right? Like, because there are so many shoulds that we're told, that we're raised, right? And I don't want it to sound like I have any blame for anyone, because I do believe that like our parents and society and everybody that teaches us this stuff that we learn along the way, they're all just teaching us what they know, right? It's not like anyone, at least in my life, is really maliciously trying to send me down the wrong path, like it's just what they know. And as parents or as, teachers or as humans, we're just sharing the rules as we know them. And so I think that's an important point to point out, is it's not like there's blame here. It's just the conversation gets to be, what is it really that we get to choose in life, and how we get to go about making our own rules, and how we get to recognize like what's super important to us, and knowing that we have everything within us to find those answers and to know that, right, like we get to choose.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's typical and understandable that many of us would sit in the drama of it and turn to whose fault it is, and why is this happening to me, and kind of play that game. But to your point, there's a higher way, or a better way to engage in those moments. And it's to not ask yourself, whose fault is this? Who can I blame? Why is this happening? But, what is trying to emerge for me or from me, and how how will I choose to be? Who do I choose to be moving forward? And to reaffirm that power of choice. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Is you get to decide and you get to ask yourself, do I want to continue showing up in these ways? Do I want to continue living by these rules? Which takes me to my next point that I want us to explore, which is the idea of rules and following rules and really being able to recognize that you can kind of make your own rules, right? So let's talk about rules. Let's just, and that's kind of like an open-ended, let's talk about it, but I'd love to get your take on the idea, on how to unlearn, on how to make your own rules and see where that takes the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And it's funny because as we're having this conversation, I'm looking at this whiteboard that's on my office wall that's in front of me. And on it, I have written the rules that I have for life right now. And I think it's really a beautiful opportunity and a beautiful conversation for people to recognize that it's not necessarily about like not having any rules. It's about recognizing that you get to choose what rules work for you, and they're not permanent, right? Like you can choose rules that work for you today, and 2 months from now when you're, a different person, because we're all always changing, right? Like you can pick the rules then in your life that really serve you. And it's what a beautiful gift, right? Like what a beautiful gift that we get to come here and have this like human experience, and we get to learn and grow, and we get to decide for ourselves, like what are we willing to tolerate in life? What do we want our life to look like? How do we want to feel?